They booked a quiet background set and got a song that changed the whole room. And it started with Maya standing behind a rented keyboard in the corner of a small riverside restaurant. She was 26, the kind of person who blended in by choice, dressed in plain black hair pinned back, eyes on the floor more than the crowd. She had agreed to play for 2 hours on a Friday night because her friend Lena managed the place and needed someone reliable after the regular pianist quit with 2 days' notice. Maya did not see it as a big moment. She saw it as rent money and a favor. The contract was simple, light jazz, soft pop, nothing too loud, no showmanship. The owner even said it twice like a warning. People come here to talk, not to be distracted. Maya understood. She had learned that lesson early. When she was 15, she played too loudly at a school fundraiser, poured too much feeling into a simple song, and afterward a teacher pulled her aside and told her that talent was nice but attention could be dangerous. Her mother agreed, not out of cruelty but out of fear. The family had never had space for dreams that made noise. Her father had been sick for years. Bills were a constant threat. Music became something Maya did quietly, at odd hours, as if she could keep it from becoming a problem. Even now, after music school and a few years of teaching lessons, she carried that habit like a second skin. That night the restaurant was full. Couples leaned close over candlelight. A birthday group took up 2 long tables near the window. Someone had brought balloons that kept bumping the ceiling fan. Maya started with gentle chords, the kind that filled empty space without asking for anything. She watched her hands, not the room. Her fingers did what they had done 1,000 times. Soft progressions, familiar melodies. The background sound of other people living their lives. At the bar, an older man in a gray blazer looked over more than once. He had the posture of someone who noticed details. He listened the way musicians listened, head slightly tilted, eyes narrowing at certain turns in the harmony. Maya tried not to care. People listened sometimes, then they went back to their conversations. That was how it usually worked. An hour in, Lena came by with a glass of water and a quick smile that looked tired. She leaned in and spoke low. "There is a group at table 12, she said. They asked if you can play something easy, like a simple song everyone knows. Something cheerful." Lena's voice carried the polite pressure of customer service. Maya felt a small pinch in her chest, not because the request was hard, but because it was specific. Background musicians were supposed to be invisible, and now someone was pointing at her. Maya nodded anyway. She could do easy. She had built her whole working life around being able to do easy. She thought of a safe pop tune, a clean melody with nothing sharp. She tried to remember which songs made people smile without making them stare. While she thought, she glanced at table 12. It was a mixed group, maybe 10 people, dressed like they had come from work. One woman kept looking at her phone and blinking fast, as if she was trying not to cry. A man beside her had his arm around her shoulders, but his face looked tense, like he did not know what to say. Maya played a light, familiar tune and kept it bright. A few people clapped softly at the end. It was fine. It was exactly what was expected. Yet something in the room felt unsettled, like the air had shifted and did not settle back into place. Maya saw the woman at table 12 smile for a second and then press her lips together as if she was holding something back. During her break, Maya went outside to the narrow side alley behind the restaurant, where the air smelled like river water and cooking oil. She called her mother out of habit, not because anything was wrong, but because her mother always answered, and hearing her voice made the world feel more stable. Her mother asked if she had eaten, if she was wearing a coat, if the drive was safe. Then, as always, she asked how the music was going. "Fine," Maya said, "just background stuff." "That is good," her mother replied, relief in her tone. "Steady work is good." Maya stared at the dark water beyond the parking lot. She thought of the small upright piano her father had bought second-hand before he got sick, the way he used to sit on the couch and listen when she practiced, eyes closed, like the sound gave him somewhere else to go. He had died 2 years ago, and in the months after, Maya had stopped playing anything that reminded her of him. Not because she had forgotten, but because she remembered too well. When she returned inside, Lena met her again, this time with an apologetic look. "Table 12 asked if you can do one more," she said, "something that feels hopeful. They said it is kind of a hard night for them." Maya looked past Lena. The older man at the bar was watching again, but now he was not the only one. A few faces had turned her way, not in a demanding way, but in a quiet kind of waiting. The restaurant had not become a concert hall, but it had become more aware. Maya felt exposed, as if the light above the keyboard had gotten brighter. She sat back down and placed her hands on the keys. She could have played another safe song. She could have done what she always did, kept it smooth and small. But the phrase "hard night for them" stuck in her mind. She thought about people carrying grief into public places because they did not want to sit alone with it. She thought about her own hard nights, the ones when she taught lessons all day and then sat in her car afterward because going home felt heavy. She thought about how music had been the only thing that could reach her father when his body failed him, how a simple melody could pull him out of pain for 3 minutes. She chose a song her father loved, one he used to hum in the kitchen when the bills were paid and the house felt calm. It was not a flashy song, but it held a truth that could not be faked. As she began, the first notes came out softer than she expected, almost fragile. She kept her eyes on the keys, afraid that if she looked up she would lose control of her face. Halfway through the first verse, she heard the room change. It was not loud, it was the sound of silence spreading, one conversation ending then another until even the clink of utensils seemed to pause. Maya's throat tightened. She had not meant to do this. She had not meant to pull attention. Yet the music was already in motion, and she could not turn it back into background without breaking it. She added a slight lift in the chorus, a warmth that made the melody open like a door. Her left hand grew steadier. Her right hand started to sing. The notes carried more of her than she intended, not performance, not drama, but presence. The kind of playing she did only when she was alone and did not have to protect herself. She glanced up once, quick as a reflex. The woman at table 12 had both hands over her mouth, tears on her cheeks, and the man beside her was crying too, openly, without shame. A few other people had turned toward them, not in discomfort, but with the soft expression of recognition, like they understood without being told. Maya's chest ached. She realized the group was not asking for an easy song because they were bored. They were asking because they needed something simple enough to hold onto. Maya looked back down and kept playing, but now she felt a line forming between her and the room, thin and electric. She did not know where it would lead. She only knew she could not pretend anymore that her music was just decoration. As she reached the final chorus, her hands began to tremble, not from fear of mistakes, but from the feeling that something private had just become shared, and there was no way to control what would happen when the last note finally landed. The wedding was meant to be simple, warm, and carefully timed. The kind of Saturday that runs on checklists and calm smiles, and for most of the afternoon it worked. The ceremony had ended on schedule, the photos had been taken on the lawn behind the hall, and now the guests were drifting into the reception space where soft music was already playing from the small stage near the windows. Nora sat at the electric piano in a black dress she had worn to dozens of paid jobs, her hair pinned back so it would not fall into her face. Her shoulders relaxed in the professional way she had trained herself to hold. She was there as background, not a feature, hired through an agency that promised the couple a classy atmosphere with no surprises. Nora had learned to be dependable because she could not afford to be anything else. She taught beginners during the week, played receptions on weekends, and tried to keep her own feelings out of the work. She had once wanted to be a performer in the honest sense, someone who played original music and let people see what it meant to her, but that version of her life had thinned out over time. The rent did not care about passion, and the past year had been heavy. Her younger brother Ben had been in and out of rehab, and her mother called with updates that were always phrased like hope but carried fear underneath. Music was the one place Nora still felt steady, yet she also knew how quickly a room could turn when someone decided you were no longer background. The reception hall smelled like rosemary chicken and buttered rolls, and the tables were covered in pale linen with small glass vases of wildflowers. The bride and groom, Claire and Matthew, moved from group to group, hugging relatives and laughing with friends, trying to look relaxed while watching the schedule in their minds. Claire had the kind of smile that brightened on contact, but Nora noticed the tightness around her eyes when she thought no one was looking. Weddings did that to people, even happy ones, especially when grief was nearby. Nora had met Claire only once, during a short rehearsal the week before. Claire had been polite and hurried, and she had apologized twice for being distracted. Her father had died less than a year ago, and there were parts of the day she was determined to get through without breaking down. Claire had mentioned it in a matter-of-fact voice while showing Nora the song list, mostly easy standards, gentle pop, a few instrumentals that would not compete with conversation. Then Claire had paused, her finger resting on one blank line near the bottom, and she had said there was one song she could not decide on. Something her father used to sing in the car. She had not written the title down, like naming it would make it real. Now, as people found their seats and the dinner service began, Nora played exactly what she had been asked to play. Light chords, familiar melodies, nothing too sharp. She kept the volume low and watched the room in small glances, reading the energy like she always did. A few guests smiled in her direction when they recognized a tune, but most kept talking, leaning close over plates, catching up on years of family updates. This was comfortable work, and Nora felt herself settle into it. Half an hour later, the wedding planner approached the stage with quick steps and a tight, friendly face. She leaned toward Nora and spoke softly so no one else could hear. "Claire's maid of honor is asking if you can do something everyone knows," she said. "Something easy that people can sing to just for a moment. They want to lighten the room before the speeches." The planner glanced back toward the head table, where Claire sat between Matthew and an older woman who looked like she was trying hard to keep her composure. Nora nodded, though she felt a small resistance inside her. Easy songs were never the problem. The problem was what people did once they started making requests. A wedding crowd could be sweet, or it could be demanding, or it could be drunk enough to turn the stage into a test. Still, she was being paid to support the day, and she understood why they wanted something that pulled everyone together. She began a simple progression and moved into a popular sing-along melody, keeping it steady and bright. A few guests clapped on the beat. Someone near the back started singing loudly, and a small wave of voices joined in, scattered at first and then more confident. The moment did what the planner wanted. The room lifted. People laughed. Phones came out for short videos. For a minute, the reception felt less like a formal event and more like a group of people who knew each other. Then, when Nora finished, the applause was bigger than she expected. It was not thunderous, but it had shape like attention tightening its focus. Nora gave a small smile and a nod and started a quieter song right away to return things to normal. But normal did not come back as easily this time. The maid of honor, a woman in a deep green dress, stood up and walked toward the stage with a folded note in her hand. She waited until Nora reached a natural pause, then held the note out. Nora hesitated, then took it and opened it with careful fingers. Inside was a short message written in neat handwriting. "Claire wants you to play something for her dad, but she cannot ask you herself," it said. "She is afraid she will cry. She told me the song is called Here Comes the Sun, and she wants it simple like he used to sing it, but she also wants it to feel like him walking into the room." Nora felt her chest tighten. She knew the song, of course. Most people did. But the way the note described it made it something else, not a playlist choice, not a cheerful classic, but a request for a feeling, for a presence that could not actually return. Nora looked up from the paper and found Claire's eyes across the room. Claire did not wave or smile. She simply looked at Nora with a quiet, pleading steadiness, as if asking a stranger for help was the last option she had. Nora glanced down at the keys. She could play it exactly as written, the safe way, pleasant and familiar. It would satisfy the request and then the night could move on. Yet Nora also knew what it meant when someone wanted a song to carry a person, even for 3 minutes. She thought of her own father, gone for 5 years now, and the way certain melodies still made her throat tighten at the worst possible times, in grocery stores and on late buses and in quiet kitchens. She set her hands on the keyboard and tested a few soft notes under her breath, not enough to draw attention, just enough to find the right starting place. She decided to begin with an intro that was not on the original recording, something gentle and open, built from the melody but slowed down, like sunlight spreading across a room before anyone names it. She knew the risk. If she made it too emotional, she could crack the balance of the reception. If she made it too plain, it would feel like a missed chance. Nora breathed in once, steadying her shoulders, and let the first notes fall with a careful warmth. The room did not stop immediately, not all at once, but Nora noticed small changes. A laugh faded. A fork paused. A voice softened to a whisper. The unexpected intro was doing what she had hoped, not calling for attention in a showy way, but inviting it, giving people a reason to listen. Nora kept her eyes on the keys. And as she began to shape the familiar melody inside the new opening, she felt the wedding shift into something more honest than a schedule. So the crowd had come for a relaxed night. The kind where the music stays in the background and nobody has to think too hard about what they feel. It was a charity mixer at a downtown hotel ballroom, meant to raise money for a local youth arts program. And the organizers had promised donors an easy program with light food, short speeches, and a few songs that would keep the mood bright. The room was dressed up to look warmer than it really was, with small lamps on cocktail tables and strings of soft lights looping along the back wall. People in suits and clean dresses stood in clusters, laughing a little too loudly, balancing drinks, checking their phones between conversations. Jenna arrived early with her keyboard in a black case that had scuff marks at the corners. She moved through the side entrance because it was quieter, and she liked being able to set up without eyes on her. She was 29, a working musician who made most of her income teaching and playing paid gigs that asked for pleasant, familiar music. Her name was on the event program, but in small print, tucked between a list of sponsors and a reminder to bid on silent auction items. Nobody had hired her to be the main attraction. They had hired her to make the room feel smooth. She liked it that way more than she admitted. When she was younger, she used to chase stages, used to imagine a life where people came to hear her, not just to fill space behind their conversations. That dream had been bruised by a few hard years that added up slowly, a scholarship that fell through, an injury in her wrist that took months to heal. And then the biggest one, her sister Elise getting sick and going downhill fast. After Elise died, Jenna stopped writing songs for a long time. She still played, still worked, still smiled when clients asked for something upbeat, but her own music stayed locked away. like it belonged to a version of her she was not sure would come back. The event coordinator, a man named Trevor with a headset and a clipboard, greeted Jenna with a polite nod and pointed her toward the small stage near the far wall. The stage was barely a foot off the floor. It held 2 microphones, a speaker, and a simple stool that looked like it had been borrowed from a storage closet. Trevor explained the plan in quick sentences. Background music during arrivals. A short set after the first round of speeches. Then a louder band later for people who wanted to stay and dance. He said the key word twice like a rule, easy, keep it easy. Jenna told him she understood, she always did. She placed her keyboard on its stand, checked the pedal, and ran a quiet scale to test the sound. The ballroom was still mostly empty, and the notes spread out gently, bouncing off the high ceiling and fading into the carpet. She adjusted the volume down. Even before the crowd arrived, she could sense the expectation in rooms like this, a desire for control, for comfort, for a night that stayed predictable. As guests filtered in, Jenna played soft standards and simple pop melodies that were hard to hate. People passed by without stopping, some offering a quick smile. A few nodded along as if the sound gave them permission to relax. Jenna kept her posture calm and her face neutral, the way she had learned to do when she did not want to invite conversation. She watched the room in small glances, noticing who looked confident, who looked tired, who seemed like they were forcing a good mood. About 40 minutes in, the ballroom was full enough that the air felt warmer. Voices layered over one another, and the scent of perfume and catered food settled into the space. Jenna saw a woman near the auction table standing alone, holding a folded program like it was something to grip. The woman was in her late 30s, hair pulled back, eyes moving across the room as if searching for someone. There was a tension in her shoulders that did not match the cheerful setting. Jenna looked away not because she did not care, but because she had learned that if she stared at people's sadness too long, it would creep into her hands. When Trevor signaled for the first speeches, Jenna lowered the music and then stopped, letting the room shift into attention. A board member thanked sponsors and told a short story about how the arts program had helped a teenager find confidence. Polite applause followed. Then another speaker stepped up, a man with a friendly voice who asked everyone to keep bidding and to remember why they were there. The crowd clapped again and the noise rose like a wave, then fell. Trevor waved Jenna back into playing. She started a bright, uncomplicated tune, something that sounded like a sunny afternoon. People returned to talking, a few laughed. The room settled back into its planned rhythm. That was when someone shouted from near the center, not in an angry way but loud enough to cut through the music. "Hey, can you play something easy, something everyone knows?" A handful of people turned toward the stage. Jenna felt the familiar tightness behind her ribs, that small flare of alarm when a background job started to feel like a spotlight. She did not stop playing right away, but her hands softened the chord, and the song drifted into a natural ending. She looked up and saw a group of younger guests, maybe mid-20s, gathered around a tall table. One of them, a man in a light gray suit with loosened tie, raised his glass like he meant it as a friendly request. People laughed around him and a couple of others called out suggestions. Something fun, something simple, give us a sing-along. Trevor looked over at Jenna and gave a quick thumbs up as if to say, go with it, keep them happy. Jenna forced a small smile and nodded. She could have played the safest option, a song that would get a quick cheer and then let the night move on. That was what the job asked for, that was what she usually did. But as she prepared to start, she saw the woman by the auction table again. The woman had turned toward the stage too, but her expression was not amused. It was open, almost raw, like she had been caught off guard by the sound of a piano in the middle of a night she was struggling to get through. The woman's eyes were shiny and she pressed the program to her chest for a second, then lowered it as if embarrassed. Jenna's fingers hovered over the keys. She felt a thought rise up, unexpected and clear. Easy for who? Easy for the crowd that wanted to sing for a moment and feel connected. Easy for the organizers who wanted a smooth event without sharp edges. Or easy for the people in the room who were carrying something heavy and had no place to set it down. She chose a melody the crowd would recognize, but she changed the way she introduced it. Instead of jumping into the catchy part, she began with a quiet progression that sounded more like a question than an invitation. The chords were still simple, still familiar, but the tone was different, warmer, and more honest. She let the harmony breathe, not dragging it out, not making it dramatic, just giving it space to mean something. At first, the group at the tall table seemed confused. They had expected a quick hit. A few started to sing anyway, but their voices faltered as they tried to match the slower feel. The room began to shift. Conversations softened. People turned their heads not because Jenna demanded attention, but because the music carried a kind of truth that was hard to ignore. Jenna felt her throat tighten, and she kept her gaze on the keyboard, grounding herself in the shape of the notes. She was not trying to impress anyone. She was not trying to hijack the event. She was doing something she had avoided for years, letting a simple song be more than a backdrop, letting it say what she could not say out loud about loss, about love, about how a person can smile in public while their heart keeps breaking in private. When she reached the chorus, the melody opened up, and the room listened in a way it had not listened all night. The woman near the auction table covered her mouth with one hand, and tears slipped down her face as if she had stopped fighting them. Jenna saw it in a quick glance and then looked down again, but the image stayed with her. She realized the song had found the one person in the room who needed it most, and now that it had, Jenna was no longer sure whether she could finish it the safe way. A thing that could hold joy and grief in the same breath. Could hold joy and grief in the same breath. He had told her it was just a birthday dinner, nothing more than good food and a quiet table with a few friends, and Lee wanted to believe him because believing felt easier than asking questions. 31 had arrived without excitement for her this year. It was not that she hated birthdays. It was that the past 12 months had taken the color out of celebrations in a way she could not explain to people who had not lived it. She had changed jobs, moved apartments, and ended a relationship that had lasted long enough to feel like a whole era. She was still learning how to walk into a room without scanning it for what might go wrong. Mark waited for her outside the restaurant with both hands in his coat pockets, trying to look casual and failing in a way that made Lee soften. He had been her friend since college, the kind who checked in without making it feel like pity. When she stepped out of her car, he smiled wide, then pulled her into a quick hug that smelled like winter air and laundry detergent. "Happy birthday," he said, like he wanted the words to land gently. Lee thanked him and followed him inside. The restaurant was an old brick place downtown with warm lighting and dark wood tables, the kind of room that made people talk more quietly. A trio was set up near the back, drums tucked close, upright bass leaning like a patient friend, and a keyboard on a stand with a small lamp clipped to the music. The band was playing softly, not trying to take over the room, just shaping the atmosphere. Lee noticed it right away, even though she tried not to. Music always pulled at her attention first, like a reflex she could not turn off. Mark led her to a table near the side wall where 4 other people stood up smiling. Jenna was there, her oldest friend from high school, with the same quick laugh and sharp eyes. Omar was there from work, holding a gift bag and looking proud of himself. 2 others Lee recognized from old friend circles, people she had not seen in months but still cared about. Their faces lit up when she arrived, and for a moment Lee felt something loosen in her chest. They ordered drinks, then appetizers. The conversation stayed light, almost carefully so. Lee could tell they were trying to give her a normal night, the kind where nobody asks about the hard parts. She appreciated it and also felt strangely tired by the effort of it. She laughed at the right moments and listened closely, nodding and asking follow-up questions, the way she had learned to do when she wanted to be present but not examined. The band played familiar standards and soft pop arrangements. Lee found herself watching the keyboard player more than she meant to. The musician was a woman about Lee's age, dressed in black, hair pulled back, posture calm. Her hands moved with confidence, but her face stayed neutral, professional, the expression of someone who had learned not to invite attention. Lee recognized that look too well. Lee tried to focus on her friends, but the music kept tugging at a corner of her mind. She remembered the last time she had sat at a keyboard under a small lamp like that, the last time she had played for a room. It had been 3 years ago at a coworker's engagement party. People had clapped, someone had asked her to sing. She had smiled, done it, then gone home and cried in the shower without understanding why. A few weeks later, her mother had gotten sick and everything shifted. The hospital visits began, the long nights, the phone calls that always sounded urgent. After her mother died, Lee stopped playing in public completely. She told people she was busy. She told herself she did not have the energy. The truth was simpler and harder. She could not risk music opening the door to grief when she had already spent months trying to keep that door shut. Jenna leaned toward her as dinner plates arrived and lowered her voice. "You are quiet tonight," she said, but not in an accusing way, just noticing. Lee smiled and shrugged. "I am good," she said. "Really?" Jenna studied her for a second, then nodded, like she was deciding to accept the answer for now. Mark kept the conversation moving, asking Omar about a project at work, teasing one of the other friends about a dating app story. Lee chewed slowly and let the warmth of the room settle into her. She started to think the night might actually be what Mark promised, a calm dinner, no surprises. Then Mark lifted his glass and tapped it lightly with a fork, and Lee felt her stomach drop even before he spoke. It was not loud, but the small sound was enough to turn heads at nearby tables. Mark stood up, smiling in a way that looked nervous now. "I just want to say something quick," he said. "Thank you all for coming. Lee has had a tough year and I wanted her to feel loved tonight. So here is to her and here is to the next year being kinder." People raised glasses and murmured happy birthday. Lee smiled and her eyes stung. She tried to keep her expression steady, but the tenderness of it hit her harder than she expected. She looked down at her plate for a second, breathing slowly, willing herself not to cry in front of everyone. When she looked up again, she saw Jenna glance toward the band. It was a quick look, but it carried a signal. Omar noticed too. Lee's pulse ticked up. She turned her head slightly and saw the keyboard player lean toward the bassist as if listening to a quiet instruction. The drummer adjusted his sticks. It looked like the band was preparing for a new tune. Lee swallowed. Her mouth went dry. Mark sat back down and reached for his drink with hands that were suddenly too careful. Lee watched him, then looked at Jenna. Jenna's smile was bright, but her eyes held something else, a secret she was trying not to show. Lee leaned toward Mark and spoke softly so only he could hear. "What is going on?" she asked. Mark blinked once, then tried to look innocent. "Nothing," he said. "It is just dinner." Lee did not believe him. Her body knew before her mind caught up. There was a particular kind of energy that comes right before a room turns its attention toward one person. Lee had felt it on stages when she was younger. She had felt it in meeting rooms when someone was about to be called out. Now she felt it rising around their table like a tide. The band began a gentle intro, the kind that could lead into anything. The keyboard player's fingers moved softly and the sound floated through the room. A few people at nearby tables turned to listen. The restaurant quieted in small increments, conversations lowering without anyone announcing it. Then the keyboard player leaned toward her microphone, smiled as if she had found someone she was supposed to find, and said clearly, "Lee Morgan, this one is for you." Lee froze, the blood rushed to her face so fast she felt dizzy. Jenna clapped first, then Omar, then Mark, and the applause spread out from their table into the room like a chain reaction. Lee's hands went cold. She looked at Mark with a sharp, disbelieving stare. Mark's smile cracked into a guilty grin. He mouthed, "I am sorry," but he did not look sorry. He looked hopeful, like he had been holding his breath for this moment. Lee's heart hammered as the band kept playing the intro, waiting, shaping the space. The keyboard player looked directly at her now, not demanding, not pushing, just inviting, as if the night was offering Lee a choice. Lee could wave it off and let the song happen without her. Or she could stand up and step into the part of herself she had hidden for years. She tried to laugh, but the sound caught in her throat. Her eyes filled before she could stop them, not from embarrassment alone, but from the sudden realization that everyone at her table had remembered something about her that she had been trying to forget.